Hey everybody, welcome back to Patriot to the Core podcast. I am your host, Thad Forrester. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 77. This one is pulled from my archives, not from the podcast archives, but from a radio interview I did in 2012 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on a show called The Game with my good friend Mick Gillispie and then his counterpart Ryan Fowler. This one's never been broadcast other than that live broadcast back in February of 2012. The reason I pulled this out is because I'm struggling to get new content on my podcast because of time. I've got great guests lined up. I've got some compelling stories. One in particular is Major Troy Gilbert. He was an Air Force F-16 fighter pilot who was killed in Iraq in 2006. His sister Rhonda and I serve on the Air Force Survivor Advocacy Council together. She has a great story to tell, and it may be more than one episode worth. Her family would like to get his story out to more people, but it blows my mind what they went through. His remains were immediately taken by Al-Qaeda, and they slowly were returned to the United States. So his family had multiple burials at Arlington, and it took almost a decade to get his whole self back home. So I look forward to having Rhonda. It's just a matter of having the time to do these interviews, and probably the same for her too. But if you're like me, 2020 has been a challenging year. I know I'm not unique in that. If I go back to March of 2020, I was notified of a job layoff. Then, about a week and a half later, I tore my Achilles playing tennis. I had surgery a few weeks later. That put me down big time. After that, I was fortunate enough to get a new job, a great job. But what did that mean? It meant selling our home and moving our family to a different city. We moved. 3 days after moving to our new city this summer, my middle son broke his arm, so there was an emergency room visit. It couldn't have been during the day. It had to be on a weekend night. Not long ago, about a month ago, my oldest son fell and knocked out his front permanent tooth, just knocked the whole thing out. So we got him to a dentist. That was 2 after-hours emergency dental visits, and we're hoping that tooth is saved. Then recently, we had another emergency room visit with my wife. So she's been struggling with some things too. So. And I remember after my oldest son knocked out his tooth, I looked at my wife and said, okay, well, you're next. What's it going to be? And sure enough, she's hurt herself physically too with her back and hip. I'm not unique, but that explains some of why I'm having a hard time making time and finding time to get fresh interviews on my show. It started out 2 a month or every 2 weeks. I did that for a few years, and I realized after the birth of my third son, I just couldn't do it. And that's okay. I do them when I can now. And now with living in temporary housing while our house is being built and working full-time, and there's been a lot of challenges to prevent me from getting fresh interviews out. But that's okay. I do them when I can, and I've got some great people lined up that I look forward to talking to, some books that I'm reading and preparing for some interviews. But I appreciate Mick Gillespie's support, who interviewed me who talked with me on this radio show. Mick has been a big supporter of the Mark Forrester Foundation, and he has helped raise money for it dating back to 2011. So I hope you have a great week. I hope your Veterans Day is great, which is coming up Wednesday. And until next time, thanks for listening.
Well, we're really pleased to have Thad Forrester in here with us, Ryan. And you know Thad. Thad's brother Mark was a student at Alabama, and he was an airman and was killed in action on September 29th of 2010 trying to rescue a comrade. And then since then, Thad has put together with his family the Mark Forrester Foundation. They have a website, markaforrester.com, and I've been really fortunate, along with the Cubs, the Smokies, and Smokies pitcher Trey McNutt, who's from Haleyville, which is Thad and Mark's hometown, to be a part of the foundation in a small way. We helped raise money for the Price of Freedom Scholarship during the summer, and some of you listening out there might have contributed to it, but that's a scholarship that they'll give away to a Haleyville student, and I think it's $1,000, and if they go to Alabama, they get an extra $500, so that's a great deal, a good incentive to come to the best school in the country. But there's a lot more stuff going on, and as far as the foundation's concerned, and Thad, I know that as far as you're like the president of the foundation, right? You're all over the country doing stuff now, huh?
A little bit. I've been able to travel out west a little bit, so I would do it full time if I could.
The once people get involved and they hear about Mark's story, what drew me to Mark was when I went to Thad worked for my brother-in-law Tim Smith and Smith Machine Shop here in town. Now he's moved up to Birmingham, but I went to Mark's funeral in Haleyville, and the more that I learned about Mark, the more that I felt like I got to just be involved and somehow giving back, because Mark was such a hero, and I know, Thad, you came and spoke to the baseball team, the Cubs AA Smokies this year, and you talked about Mark, and what was great was, and I'm wearing one of the bracelets right now. You guys dropped off some bracelets that have Mark's name on there, and a slogan, "Be like Mark," and you told the players about what made Mark great, and I just remember everybody being real quiet and listening. What were some of the things that you talked about that day?
Well, one of the things that I feel is most important that we can learn from Mark is, well, Mick, it's easy to say when someone, after they've been killed or after they die, that they were the greatest person in the world. We do that all the time. But with Mark, in his case, he really was a man that had high standards, and he was very consistent. And so, we weren't there with him 24/7, but we constantly are told by his teammates and his peers of the standards that he held. And think about the stressful circumstances he was in. He was in the most coveted area for combat controllers in Afghanistan, which means it was very, very active. He encountered the enemy on a regular basis, and but yet he still just was consistent in his beliefs. And so that's why I really believe that, his blood was some of the best this country had to offer.
Well, the great part about the foundation is that, and something that, Ryan, you mentioned, being a better American and being a better patriot. We've had people over fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq that are out there defending the freedom that we enjoy every day. And I know there's some people that we all know that have no appreciation for those guys that are out there that are doing that. And for Mark, he made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom, which is really, it's just overwhelming when you think about it. And he was such a big Alabama fan. That's another part of this that always gets me is when you go to markaforrester.com and you see the picture of Mark, he's got all of his equipment on, all of his Army gear, yet he's got that Alabama hat on. He's got that crimson hat on, and you said that he wore all that stuff all the time over there. He graduated from here, and then and in Afghanistan he was known as Bama. Or Alabama. They all loved him out there.
Yeah, one of his dogs, that they always had dogs, and one of them he named Dixie.
And so he graduated from the university. Kind of paint the picture, because chances are we're probably talking to people that may have had a chance to know him. That right. That just now kind of connected and said, okay, hey, I think what years did he attend here in Tuscaloosa?
He graduated.
Or maybe the range.
He graduated in 2006. He started here in 2002.
When I went to the Smokies a couple of weeks ago, everybody said, "Hey, did you hear about the Alabama golfer?" And I said, "Yeah, I did hear about the Alabama golfer." And I think 4 or 5 people pulled me up to tell me that, because now that they've kind of been involved in the in getting the word out about Mark and what happened. But you can tell us about it. I know it was Corey Whitsett, right? And he's a golfer, a sophomore at Alabama. Now just explain to us the tournament that was in Phoenix in December, and how that all came together. And I know that the bottom line is that these golfers represented a fallen patriot from their country, and Corey represented Mark Forrester, and he won the tournament.
Yeah, really, this kind of came about. We didn't know about it until after it was it was just about to take place. And we've since been in contact with Corey's father and also the coach, Jay Sewell, I believe is his name. And, we know that the bag of every hero whose name was on every bag, they will be auctioned off at some point. And I believe the money is going to go to I can't remember the names of the groups involved in that Patriot All-American tournament. but the money will go back to that organization. And so Mark's bag, it's probably here at the university now, and we've had people tell us that, they will make sure that they bid on that bag so my parents can get it.
Really? And this is a ping golf bag. Like his bag was actually like it had like sewn on stuff there this was the Mark Forrester ping golf bag.
Correct.
That Corey actually wore that day.
Yeah, we were honored. We're very appreciative of them doing that, and we heard about the type of student and young man that Corey is and how he represents the university and his family well. So we appreciate them doing that.
No, when I heard that, it made me smile. And but you've done a lot of other stuff, and one of the big things going on right now to raise money for the foundation is the 31-mile birthday walk on May 19th, and that's something that is near and dear to you. Is organizing this walk every year.
Yeah, I mean, we started last year, of course, because that was the first year after his death. We do it around his birthday. His birthday is May 15th, and so last year we walked 30 continuous miles. This year it'll be 31, and we'll add a mile every year. A lot of his teammates came, other people that knew Mark participate, and doing a Ruck March is something very common amongst these guys in the military, especially special tactics guys like Mark. But for regular folks like us, you think you can go out and walk, but you can't just go out and walk 31 miles without stopping, without preparing a little bit. So it's a great experience. Last year the weather was incredibly cool, and so we didn't even hardly break a sweat. Some people did, but this year we probably won't get that lucky.
And where's this going to be at?
Up in Haleville.
Okay, and it's 31 miles, and I was just reading here. Mark and being someone that served in the Air Force and ROTC, didn't actually have a chance to enlist, but I was reading the combat controller, and I know a little bit about that. That is a lot of people know about the Navy SEALs, and they know about the Army Rangers, but rarely does people understand what combat controllers actually do. Pararescue is also one of the special forces of the United States Air Force. They go in and set up air commands. They go in these, like you've talked about it, I'm sure you know, but the audience out there may not. They go in these hostile environments, and they set up the air communications to communicate between the planes, and that actually provides the air attack. So they set up the actual airports. So I was just reading that those are not just, they're a select few.
Very.
Very select few. And for someone to graduate from the University of Alabama and have an opportunity to probably serve as an officer, he chose a route right there that was not very selfish of him, and he removed that and said, I'm going to go serve as an enlisted guy. I know I've got a degree, but I want to do this, and just to even make it through that, they call it the pipeline of the course. That is an amazing accomplishment. Combat controllers are no joke, and the best of the best of all the military branches.
Yeah, and Mark, he has basically, essentially a photographic memory. He got a degree in finance, but he decided, he was actually serving a mission for our church in 2001 when the 9/11 attacks happened. So he decided then he was going to serve our country and help defeat terrorism, and that was, one of his missions on Earth. And so everyone in the family and outside the family tried to convince him to go in as an officer, but no, he was committed. He wanted to enlist. He knew his chances of getting greater deployments would be increased as an enlisted man, and sure enough, he was deployed to a very hostile area.
Now, one thing that you told the baseball team when you spoke to them this summer is you said that when there was the sound of gunfire in Afghanistan, a lot of guys ran the other direction, but your brother Mark ran to the gunfire.
Yeah, they say he was a man who ran towards the sound of enemy fire, and that's what you want in a warrior. And there's so much to Mark and his story, and of course I'm his brother, and I am super close to this. This is my passion, but there's so much to learn about him, and to go to his website and read markaforster.com, and I love doing presentations about him, and not only him, but other great Americans. We specifically honor Mark on the website, but we also highlight other great men and women, not just in the Air Force, not just combat controllers, but just great Americans.
Yeah, we talked about another project that you're involved in right now, and that's and you're going to have to explain this, but there's an artist that does pictures, portraits for the family, and the possibility of doing one on Mark, and maybe even having it tied in with the university somehow.
Yeah, it's called the American Fallen Soldiers Project, and it used to be the Texas Fallen Soldiers Project, and Phil Taylor, who does this, he lives in Texas. He paints these amazing portraits of people who've been killed while serving our country, and there's a huge backlog, and he really tries to capture their eyes, and he presents them at a very nice ceremony to the family, and if everything goes as planned, there will be a presentation this fall at an Alabama football game. Phil happens to be a big Alabama fan too, and when you saw all of Mark's pictures, how he had an Alabama cap, sometimes a shirt on, and so many pictures in Afghanistan, he said, we got to do this big and do this at an Alabama game. So that's the plans. He's working on the portrait now, and he does incredible work, and we're looking forward to that opportunity.
I thought that, one thing about Mark that was special, too, is you just mentioned it. Not only did he wear an Alabama hat, but there's a certain pride that we have, and all three of us in here graduated from the university and are fans, and not just fans of the football team, but fans of the culture that we have and our beliefs and the way that this A represents us more than just, cheering for a team on Saturday. It's a lot bigger than that, and there was no doubt to me that when I saw and heard about Mark, that he was a guy that exemplified it perfectly, and I'm very proud of him, and that's why I got involved, because he's our guy. I mean, look, he Mark's our guy. There's people that all across this country that have given their life for America, but Mark's ours, and that's why we've got involved, and that's why a lot of you have got involved, because we take care of our own here. Mark's certainly special, and there's also something that you can watch if you're curious about Mark. Maybe you think he's somebody you had class with, or maybe you just want to find out more about his story. But Thad, he was featured on Coming Home, a show on Lifetime that talked all about his story, and the last time I looked, it was the only time they ever featured a soldier that passed away. Yeah, at least in season 1. That was the only story about a fallen hero. But it was the A story of that episode back last spring, and I know Coming Home is doing a season 2 this year. But yeah, they featured Mark, and we met at least a Marine pilot who Mark was working with overhead. Actually, when Mark was killed, and he was directing airstrikes, and this pilot was trying to communicate with him, and then the radio went silent, and that's after Mark had been shot. I know they're doing a lot in Haleyville, too. I mean, they're, naming a street after Mark? Yeah, there's a road, the Mark A. Forster Memorial Drive. How are your mom and dad, Ray and Pat, how are they doing? This has been a really big trial for them. Really tough on them, but, they're getting by. Fortunately, my sister lives close by now, and she's got several kids, and they keep her busy, too. I'm reading, the website, and I've known a little bit about Mark because of Mick and the relationship that he has with you. But I'm reading, it says most of his teammates, leaders, and this is a unique fraternity. We talk about fraternities out on the campus, and this is much different because you build trust with your teammates because you count on them for your life. I mean, they protect you. Right. And it talks about his funeral memorial service ended their speech with Roll Tide. It's good for Mark to be, the legacy continues. Yeah, I regularly have people tell me that serve with Mark, hey, I don't normally say this, but Roll Tide. I'm happy for Alabama, because these are guys that are fans of other schools all over the country. Right. Explain one more time, and maybe I misunderstood. How did he pass away? Was he trying to rescue someone? Explain that as best of your knowledge. Obviously, from the teammates and people there. Did I guess how did he pass away? And I know that's probably a touchy subject for you, but how did that happen, or do you know of how that happened? Well, I've been on a mission to figure out exactly the whole scenario. In fact, if I could go over there to that village and have someone just show it to me, I would. But basically, they were involved in an intense firefight, and they went to a village that hadn't been entered in several years.
controlled by the Taliban, and they were attacked, and the enemy was so close that Mark really couldn't call in an airstrike because they were too close to him, and so he was trying to get help. His teammate, Mark was attached to a Green Beret team, and so his Special Forces teammate stepped outside the compound for